Hey folks, welcome to Freep Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, you got your first road trip of the year coming up to a little town called Green Bay. I don't know, 100,000 people and a stadium that holds not quite that, but almost holds the whole town. I know you've been there before, one of the great venues in football. But the bigger deal, Carlos, and you're going to tell us what's going to happen, is the Lions have a chance to win, take sole place of the NFC North, the division. I think get to 3-1 for the first quarter, if you like to break the quarters of the season down into quarters, and generally make Southeastern Michigan a very, very happy place for the next 10 or 11 days after the game. What's going to happen?
Well, what's going to happen is the first quarter of the season won't be played until the first quarter of the next game, Shawn, because they play 17. So you have to work on your math a little bit, I would say. But it's going to be. Lambeau's awesome. I mean, it's if you haven't been there, you got to go once. If you're a Lions fan, even if you're an NFL fan, I'd say it's one of those venues people always talk about. Even Dan Campbell even mentioned it, telling the rookies this week, make sure you soak it in and soak it up. And it's really, really unique atmosphere. It's a special place to play. The fans get really excited. Even the Lions fans who are there at the stadium, you can see they're enjoying it. They're chopping it up with the Green Bay fans. So it's great. This is what you want, right? I mean, both teams are actually playing pretty well. The Packers coming off a huge comeback win on Sunday against the Saints. Jordan Love is being compared to, he's being compared to Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers for his comeback ability. And their defense is actually playing well for the Packers. But look at the Lions, right? Coming off another big win, holding the Falcons to 2 field goals. The offense playing pretty well. It's the perfect prime time, 8:15 p.m. kickoff here in Detroit game on Thursday. So it should be, if nothing else, I hope it's a good game. I mean, I hope it's a fun game and it goes a little back and forth. It's not a blowout. I'm not a Lions fan, so I have no rooting interest, but I hope it's an entertaining game. I expect it to be, and it should be close. Don't you think is this almost a good test for the Lions to see, playing in enemy territory, prime time with, this time I guess they have their Travis Kelce, right, and Jordan Love, so they're not missing a key player.
Oh, I think it's a real good test. First of all, it's a road game, a tough place to play. Green Bay's looks like a solid team. Maybe not a great team, but look, we talk about this ad nauseum. It's hard to win in the NFL, right? I mean, it just is. Every now and again, you get a team that goes winless, as Lions fans know, or wins 1 or 2 games, but the other 27, 28 teams are not going to be easy to beat on the road if you're not a dominant team, right? So you take out the couple of worst teams, you take out the couple of best teams most years, and those other 25, 26 teams are going to be in fourth quarter games and in a struggle, in a fight, especially the road team. It's just kind of the nature of the way the NFL works. So yeah, absolutely. You go up there, you win that game, you're feeling pretty good. Plus you want to stay above. Right now they're above 500, and you want to stay above that. Plus, Carlos, it's just funny how quickly this has all changed. I know it was doom and gloom after Seattle, but I don't know that people think it's a slam dunk to win Green Bay, but there is an expectation that they should win this game. Do you feel that?
Yeah, definitely, Shawn. I mean, that's they're there. I mean, I talked to Dan Campbell about this. I asked him about it on Monday at the press conference, and they won big game in the season finale last year in Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers out a loser at Lambeau as a Packer, and they beat Kansas City, asterisk or not, in prime time, the biggest prime time game you could think of, right? Besides maybe the Super Bowl season opener, and they won that game. This is a big game, and they seem to be stepping up, and I was impressed. I mean, the Falcons didn't look great, but part of that was you got to give the Lions credit for not making them not look great. So I'm picking the Lions to win this game. Even though there's a whole Lambeau mystique and the home field advantage and this and that. Right now, I would say the Lions are in the Packers' heads a little bit when you think about what they did to them last year and how they're playing this year. And as I've said it before, they were an overtime coin flip away from probably being 3-0 right now. So I wouldn't want to play the Lions right now. And there should be an expectation. They've earned that respect and the pressure too to have to win this kind of game. But it's almost a no lose situation, right? I mean, if they lose, it's like, well, it was the Packers. They're in Green Bay and whatever. Lions are a little dinged up too on top of that. So we'll see if Montgomery plays or Taylor Decker, but that offensive line still, even if, it's still a little banged up no matter what. I think that you can't hammer them too much unless they get handled and, just crushed. But if it's a close game and they lose, understandable. But I think people expect them not only to make it competitive, but to easily be able to win this game. Do you think they're going to go in? Who has the advantage here? Who has the psychological advantage, Shawn?
I don't know about psychological advantage. I think the teams are not that far apart in terms of talent. I would take Jared Goff at this point in his career over Jordan Love, right? Mm-hmm. At this point in his career. And that always makes a difference for sure. But I don't think there is too much separating them. So you got to give the edge because home field does matter. I believe that in football. I mean, maybe not quite as much as in college football, but it still matters in the NFL. I mean, geez, we've seen. I mean, you were there Sunday when they beat Atlanta. You were there when they lost to Seattle. That atmosphere is something, and it's got to count for something. It's hard to quantify it.
It helped the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and it helped the Lions against Seattle. You're right. Home field is it's crucial, right?
Well, the numbers bear out. That there's a home field advantage, right? So how much is it worth? You don't know. I mean, obviously, not every team wins every game at home, but over the course of the season, the math supports that. It's just hard to say, okay, is it worth 3 points, 4 points? I mean, the bettors, what do they give home field advantage? 2.5, 3 points, something like that. So maybe they know something. I mean, they're the ones with all the money at stake. So they've figured out they've turned social science into science in terms of figuring out that number. But yeah, no, I think I'd probably pick them to win. I mean, I'm going to have to pick for the free press. It's obviously the best part of the job, is making predictions. But I would, I guess I would pick the Lions.
Yeah, I think that with this. I think a lot of this. I don't know if a lot, but a fair amount of this game might come actually down to defense, and the Lions' defense looked pretty good against the Falcons. And obviously, as you know, Hall of Fame candidate Brian Branch, rookie with 3 whole games under his belt, has looked really good. But it's going to be interesting because he's going to be part of the game plan now for the Packers and maybe going forward if he keeps playing this way, like 11 tackles and a couple of pass defenses and 3 tackles for loss. I mean, he was all over the field. He's been really good. They have to account for him now, even as a rookie with just 3 games. That they have to be aware of him. So this would be a nice test. But I think both defenses, I think the Packers gave up 10 points last week on defense, and the Lions obviously gave up, just 2 field goals. So that it may be a little bit of a tighter struggle here, even though both offenses are actually playing well. The Packers actually offenses, I looked it up, and they're in the top 10. I mean, they're in points scored, so they should. The Lions are maybe a little bit behind them, but the Lions, I think we were kind of waiting for them to be as explosive as we'd seen them last year. That hasn't quite happened. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown's playing well, but he's, a little bit bothered by the turf toe. The run game was quite a bit different without David Montgomery. So there's some things there, but Sam Laporta is stepping up. It's not as explosive as I thought it would have been by this point in the season, but they're 2-1, easily could be 3-0. So, and I think Goff only had attempts, actually, even just attempts to 2 wide receivers. 4 guys caught balls, and only 2 of them were wide receivers. So, but they won the game. So, does it have to be textbook every time? Not necessarily. But if this offense gets going the way it should go, that would make a huge difference for them. But until I think there's more health, and your favorite athletes in the world, the offensive line, get completely healthy, I don't know if we'll see the offense hit at all cylinders. But the defense might have to step up more.
That's right. They matter, right? Turns out offensive linemen matter.
They matter. They just don't have to be as Kobe Sorsdahl and Graham Glasgow and Matt Nelson and could tell you don't have to be a first round pick to actually be a decent player on the offensive line.
No,
first round picks.
Brian Branch is not a first round pick. Sam Laporta is not a first round pick, but you do, you do need offensive linemen, and it's I don't know. It's interesting how you are an expert in putting together a team and being a general manager and so forth. All the studying you've done in the league over the years, it's pretty impressive. But turns out offensive linemen do matter, and when
GMs pick them outside of the first round.
Yeah, but sometimes they pick them in the first round too, right? So it's just they've done that for 30, 40 years. It's not like you stop seeing that like with running backs where they are occasionally still taken in the first round. I mean, the Lions have one, and they play the team who has one in Atlanta. But you used to see a run of running backs at the top 10 picks. You just don't see that anymore. I've not noticed that same trend with offensive tackles in particular. We're not really talking about guards and centers, are we? Generally, we're talking about tackles.
Right. Tackles, you still need elite
tackles in particular, right?
Right.
So until that happens, I mean, maybe there'll be a trend on that. But until that happens, right now the way it's played, it matters, and the Lions will be better when they get their guys back. To your point about Montgomery, for sure. But look, even when they get healthy, though, I mean, they were healthy in Kansas City more or less. They still, Kansas City may turn out to have a pretty good defense. They've not really let anybody score. Obviously, Chicago is not scoring on anybody, right? They just blanked or beat the mess out of the Bears. But so maybe Kansas City defense is going to end up being really good. But in the Seattle, they had 31. I don't know if Jameson Williams is going to make a difference or not. But the receivers are not quite the same right now, are they? Laporte is helping make some of that difference. It's funny because Michigan is in a similar spot. They have a good receiver in Roman Wilson, and then they got a really, really talented, fairly young tight end who they're starting to lean on more and more, just like the Lions are with Laporte. And we've seen this overall in football lately. So maybe, the Chiefs won a Super Bowl with Kelsey as their best guy, and after they lost some incredible receivers. We've just seen this a little bit lately, where you get a tight end and some good possession guys, and maybe you don't need all that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it helps with the game plan for sure. Having a deep threat is always super important to most offensive game plans in the NFL. Khalif Raymond, he's been playing well. He had a few catches. Josh Reynolds disappeared after he had a couple of really good games to start the season, which was surprising. And he played a lot too, but no targets. So, if Ben Johnson can get it done different ways, right? Even when the Falcons took away Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield with short passes to get him into space, they did a good job of that. They still got their yards. I mean, they still found a way, and that's a credit to Johnson and Jared Goff to target four guys, and you still win. And without your lead running back, and you win 20-6. So if you don't have to, great. I don't know if that's sustainable. That's the only thing, is you still would always like somebody with some speed on the outside. It changes the way the defense plays you. It gives you more options, opens up more things. So I don't think they want to keep living that way. But if Jameson Williams, he just came back, to the facility, he can start rehabbing and training with the team. Not rehabbing, but training with the team for 3 weeks, and then he can play week 7. So that should help. But it's also going to be expecting a lot for him to make an immediate impact, I would say. But just having him out there, I think, possibly changes the way defensive coordinators approach the lines. But yeah, you don't. If you're a good coordinator, you draw good plays up and keep the defense, honest and have a little bit of balance. You can do a lot of things. That's what Ben Johnson's kind of showed us so far. Not the explosiveness that we've seen quite, especially last year, second half of last year, but it's there. They've been right there. The offense has been doing its part. And it was really nice for the defense to do their part and pick up the team last week after a disappointing game against Seattle. So this week it's going to be It's going to be tough, and the defense has to bring its own juice, right? They're not going to have the fans on their side in Green Bay.
No, that's absolutely right. I feel like it's going to be a while before we really see what this offense can be. I mean, Williams is obviously part of that. The offensive line getting healthy. I mean, Montgomery is critical. Obviously, showed what he could do against Seattle and late against Kansas City. He's a nice, good back. But to me, it's not just that. It's also how they will eventually use Gibbs in combination with Montgomery. And really, because I think, you're talking about Ben Johnson's creativity. I think there's a lot to sort of think about there and figure out. And so it may be another 6-8 weeks before we really start to get a true feel of what this offense can be. When
6 to 8 weeks, that's the season. That season's over. What are you talking about?
When the pieces are there. No,
late December.
No, yeah, they'll be. They played 3 games, 6 weeks. You got a bye week in there. Even if it's 8, that's still 5 or 6, 7 games left at the end of the year. Sometimes it just takes a while with health, and Williams missing the first 6 games, so he's not just going to come back and be great right away. It's going to take him a few games. So that's what I mean. It may be a bit, which is why it's critical that defense keeps playing as close as possible as it did against Atlanta and also Kansas City. I mean, Seattle was whatever. But, no, they're going to have to really play complementary football until they're whole and sort of have some time to really, really see what they can be with their pieces. I mean, to me.
One of the reasons I also really dislike the offensive line is that everybody's always makes a big deal, especially with the Lions, that, this group hasn't gotten a chance to play together. It's barely had one game to get. Well, there's 5 pieces. Someone's bound to get hurt. You look across everybody. Someone's always hurt on the offensive line. There's just too many moving parts there. They're already down to their 4th right tackle, fourth string right tackle. Vitai's probably done, right guard. It's just I'm not trying to wish him any ill, but it's just a matter of time before Ragnar gets hurt again. I mean, he's constantly dealing with a toe thing. It's just managing it. He barely practices anymore because of that. So, Decker might come back, but he's also up there. I mean, they're toward the Decker and Ragnar, especially, 2 key pieces, but they're toward the end of their careers. They're probably not going to be on the Lions very much longer. So it's just age, it's just time, and they've been really good players, but it happens. And now you got to start moving pieces around, and Sewell to the left and everything. And Glasgow's plugging in. And, so I think too much is made of we have this perfect, quintet here, and it shall play and be together for 17 games. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't happen anywhere in the league, really. People just don't get that kind of health from elite players, because by the time you're a really good player, usually a little bit older. But even so, I think this run game should still be able to function. And I think Gibbs, and the one good thing about running back is it doesn't change that much. I think Gibbs talked about it, that, he's being asked to catch the ball a lot more than he was in college. But, he has a lot of experience doing that anyway. But, running back, short passes, whatever it is, screens, whatever, but, running up the middle, running off tackle, running whatever. I mean, it's not the most complex. It's, position to learn. So the learning curve isn't that great. So I think we should see a lot more. Maybe the Jameson stuff, it might take a few weeks, 2, 3. I think he plays 2 games and they have a bye or something. So that might help. But he's also in the 2nd year. So I think we should see, what is this? This is going to be the end of September, sometime around the end of October, early November. We should have a good gauge of kind of where this offense is and what its capabilities are, assuming health for the most part on Laporta and Amon-Ra. That's another little bit of a concern, but he's playing well, managing the issue with the turf toe. But you're right though. I mean, if it's good now, if the offense is pretty good, decent to good now, it could be much better. Of course, if they get a lot of injuries, it could be much worse. But yeah, it's and there's promise. I think it's still a fun offense to watch, and it has a lot of potential. They're going to have to maybe maybe lean on it a little more this week if the defense doesn't come up as well as it did against Atlanta.
It's just going to, because of the moving parts and some of the missing pieces, it's just going to take a while. It's kind of like last year. Defensively, they were really, really bad, historically bad, and then they got themselves together, and that's when they went on the winning streak, right? The defense went from the worst in the league to, I don't know, somewhere in the mid-high teens, if I'm not mistaken, statistically. The offense isn't obviously that bad, but sometimes it just takes a while. Who knows? Maybe they'll come around in a hurry. I just feel like with some of the young, you heard Jared Goff the other day talking about Laporta's just started to scratch the surface. It's like Jared Goff said Sunday, Carlos. Sam Laporta's just starting to figure it out a little bit. He's got a long way to go. And it's the same with Jahmyr Gibbs. And you're right, running backs don't have the learning curve a middle linebacker does, or even the slot defensive back in the way Brian Branch does, or a center does, or obviously a quarterback. But there still is a learning curve. And if you're a Lions fan, you could look at what they've done and what they're doing, the fact that they've been missing a few pieces, and the fact that there's critical skill spots at the tight end and the running back, slot back / slot receiver, whatever hybrid Gibbs is going to be. That there's some room there to improve a decent amount. I think you mentioned that the Lions were 8th in yards, but 13th in points. That speaks to a little bit of the red zone issues. I don't know if it's fair to say they have issues 3 games in, but we did see that a few times against Atlanta. That's why they only scored 20 points. But yeah, to me, there's a reason to be somewhat optimistic that this offense can get back to where you saw it a year ago.
Oh, for sure. You should be optimistic. I mean, Laporta is off to a really good start. It'll be interesting because, the NFL is a league of adjustments. And, the same way Brian Branch is, they're going to have to be aware of him. Opposing offenses, opposing defenses are going to start watching Sam Laporta too a little bit more. Probably not giving as much space and focusing on him. And that's where it's just the more weapons you have, right? You can't guard everybody. You can't guard Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta and Gibbs and so you got to give something up. He's off to a good start. And the biggest thing I think that Campbell and Goff have talked about is just how much trust he's engendered by being reliable, not making the same mistakes repeatedly. Certainly they even say not twice, which is incredible. But yeah, when you gain somebody's trust like that, and don't forget, Jared Goff was, he played well with TJ Hawkinson. Maybe there's affinity he has there for the tight end position. Sometimes guys just click with that, right? Mahomes and Kelsey, and it's an important piece for the quarterback if they utilize it correctly. So if Laporta can be the new Hawkinson for him, that bodes well. But yeah, they could be scratching the surface on you, right? This could be. I would only expect it to get better, assuming relative health. I would assume the offense to get better red zone and everywhere else, points, everything, efficiency.
Well, I'm with you. It makes sense, and we will see. We got the Lions at the Packers Thursday night. You will be there. I'll look forward to seeing what you write, what you come up with. Your musings, your stylings. That'll be fun. But in the meantime, we need to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about Miguel Cabrera. And I've also got a question I want to pose to you about an unrelated subject to Cabrera, but it is sports related. So we'll get to that and get to more Carlos and Shawn right after the break. Welcome back to Freep Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, Miguel Cabrera is playing his final 2 series this week. His final home game will be Sunday. I want to say against Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And there's going to be a ceremony to honor him on Saturday, and then Sunday's going to be it after all these years. And I want to get your thoughts on Cabrera. And share a few of mine. But before we do, real quickly, I do want to ask you a question that I've been thinking about, and I actually wrote about it yesterday. And I talked about this. If we can do a little cross promotion here, I talked about this with Mike Elrick, who's our colleague who writes a really good investigative column for the Detroit Free Press. And he runs a little podcast called The Soul of Detroit. And we not debated, but we kind of mulled over this question. I was at a press conference at Schumacher Hall Monday, Harbaugh's weekly press conference. They brought J.J. McCarthy out, the quarterback. And he was, I was talking about Harbaugh being back, and I asked McCarthy about Harbaugh being back, and Harbaugh about McCarthy being back. Anyway, at one point he was asked, why were you so much better against Rutgers and Bowling Green? And instead of giving a football answer, a cliche, or whatever, he just said flat out the pressure that it got to him. And then he elaborated a little bit and then talked in some detail about how much time he had spent with his coaches and Harbaugh in particular trying to analyze it and figure out where it had come from. He said never felt that before in his life. And people would think, well, it's Bowling Green. Anyway, I'm just curious what you thought of that, because you don't often hear athletes say, I was struggling with pressure, which you could also say anxiety. It was, and I was like, oh, good for you for saying that, right? But it was interesting. And I guess we were talking about this with Mike, and I'm curious what you think. Do you see that this might be more and more something people might talk to, just because the way society thinks about mental health issues now and thinks about anxiety and depression? I think McCarthy talked about depression, but could you see that this might be a conversation we might have more and more with athletes moving forward?
I don't think it'll be a regular thing, I think it's, you obviously wrote a column about it. You're tricking me into talking about your column is really what
No, we don't need to talk
but
about my column. I meant to mention that earlier, and I was just thinking about it. I wanted your take on it, because it's, we've heard some athletes say, yeah, I've struggled with anxiety, with depression. They're usually professionals, right? We've seen it with tennis, right? Naomi Osaka talked about it and taking time off. We've seen some, the Detroit Tiger, Austin Meadows, hasn't talked about it, but right. I mean, so we're seeing it more and more, but it was just, I haven't seen it too much from college kids, college athletes. But I have heard coaches, kind of off the record, talk about it from time to time, right?
Yeah.
Saying, hey, so-and-so struggling. But no, I was just curious what you think.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's, if you have even the smallest glancing familiarity with sports, playing ping pong with your, sister or brother or whatever as a kid, their pressure is real in sports. The pressure to perform, the pressure to overcome adversity. It's that's why sports resonates within our society, is because it speaks to a lot of the struggles that you have as a person, but they're encapsulated in the form of a game, right? Of a finite competition. And it's always there. But whether they're going to talk about it or not, I think that at least right now, Shawn, even though a lot of teams, pro teams, college teams, they employ mental health experts, mental health coaches, that's been going on for a while. I think it's still seen as there's still a little bit of a bias or
stigma. Is that what you're thinking?
Stigma is the perfect word for that. When you admit to a frailty, any kind of frailty, but especially mental health. And I think the good part about it is people are still scared of it because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't understand it. A long time ago, when Titus Young was going through his struggles, we've talked about this a little bit before, and I have a background in my family with mental health issues. And when it happened, I recognized it pretty quickly that this is not just a guy being a jerk. And that was what a lot of people thought. A lot of the reporters thought it. And I did speak with them and told them, listen, this isn't what you think it is. He's not just being a jerk because he's being a jerk, whatever. But the problem is, especially in sports and the whole landscape of sports, the whole culture of sports, it's not, oh boy, like, what is this? Let's understand this. And people want to think, well, what is it? Is it bipolar? Is it, schizophrenia? Let's identify it and give it a pill. Let's give it a name. Let's give it a fix. And how many weeks is it? It's just like people want to treat mental health like it's a shoulder sprain. Is it a grade 2 or grade 3? How long? And that's not how mental health works. That's not how, it's pretty obvious by now. But that's what's scary to society, but also to teams, to personnel people, to coaches, is they can't put their arms around it that easily. So this is, maybe you're right. I mean, this could be a stepping stone, a brick in the wall, right? That another example of, hey, if a high level athlete like JJ McCarthy speaks of this openly, and that's only a good thing. That only paves the way for other people. And I'm not actually that shocked to hear him say, because the whole thing of this, the meditation under this goalpost and all that, that's different. We haven't really seen that much from other players. So I hope it does. Do you think this opens the door for more honest conversations?
It could. It was startling when it came out of his mouth, when the words were coming out of his mouth. It was startling. But then on the other hand, it wasn't, because of how we've come to know him a little bit. And he didn't go into super great detail. But for a quarterback in a place like Michigan to sit and say the pressure got to me, and I've never experienced that before, and then I had to take a lot of talking to figure out what it was. And he was talking about breaking it down and diagnosing it, right? I mean, he was talking in therapeutic terms in a way. And I was just, and what was interesting, Carlos, is how comfortable he was talking about it. And which I should have written. I didn't think about that until today, actually. But sometimes on a deadline. But just I was thinking back about it, because we were talking about it with Mike Elrick, or ML. We might get in trouble for not calling him ML, but
that's Mr. Elrick.
Yes, that's Mr. Elrick. No, so we were kind of talking through it. Sometimes after you've written something, you're like, oh, shoot. But yeah, no, he was fairly comfortable talking about it. So I don't know. I could see a world where people aren't going to divulge specific details necessarily, but where they're more and more comfortable saying, hey, I need a break, or I was struggling with that and I had to work through that, and so helped me with that, without getting into. I could see, because it is. Brick is the word you used. That's a good analogy. It's a good metaphor. Whatever. It's little by little, and then all of a sudden you're, 10 years from now, it's common. I mean, not that McCarthy's starting it, but you know what I mean. I could absolutely see that. Society tends to change that way. It's like a ripple and the water, and all of a sudden it's at shore. And,
it takes time. It takes time. I mean, the way that we used to talk about concussions, like the guy got his bell rung, and nobody wanted to talk about it.
Right.
And nobody wanted, it was voodoo, or not voodoo, taboo to talk about it. And now people are a lot more open about CTE.
Voodoo. It could have been voodoo.
It could be voodoo. But yeah, you have to be willing. And it's hard. I mean, mental health is tough, because it's not just one thing. It's not just, I struggle with this one part of my life. There's other things attached to it. And as you find out, when you talk to people who have issues, struggles, mental health struggles, it's not simple. There's a whole lot to it, and it's a constant struggle. So it's good that he is willing to talk about it to some extent, but also that he's willing to work on it and recognizes he needs to work on it. And I'm sure, I will bet you there are a lot of high level star athletes who deal with this all the time. They're in therapy, they're on medication, they're managing it, and it's a struggle. I mean, that world, you and I have been around it for a long time, and sometimes I just can't believe how these people aren't paralyzed by that kind of pressure.
I agree.
That they, I mean, just you and I have, sometimes I'm sure they've asked you, people ask me, is it hard to write articles where lots of people read them and they criticize you? And it's like, it can be, and it's not for everybody, but that's also not 60,000 people booing me when I drop a ball, and go into Instagram and let's kill this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Threatening. Yeah, no kidding.
So it's good for JJ. I hope he continues that path. I hope he inspires other people to share their struggles and their journey. It would be great to see. It was a really good column, Shawn, by the way. I'm glad that I was hoping we may talk a little bit about Michigan, but just this one interlude on, we stole a little bit of thunder from Hell Yes, but whatever. We came first, so we get to claim some territory. The blue wall continues, by the way.
I know, and I feel bad if I can divulge a little inside baseball here. This is just going to sound crazy, but I was originally scheduled to go to Michigan State on Monday, right? And because Tom Izzo was going to talk because basketball's starting, and I wanted to write about just how I don't remember the last time for Spartans fans, basketball can't come soon enough, right? So that's basically why I was going to go right. And we got late word, and so our sports editor Kirk texted me and said, "Hey, on second thought, McCarthy's talking," and I had talked to him about their relationship a little bit. So I was just curious. I wanted to ask them each about the other and being back with each other, and so I was prepared to write that. And I dealt with that a little bit. And Harbaugh ended up giving a really good football answer at one point. But yeah, sometimes you don't know where it's going to take you. So, but I didn't want to talk about the column, but I did want to ask you specifically about that just in general, because, you're always very thoughtful overall, but specifically in matters like this, right? You have some experience, as you alluded to. And so I'm sorry in our pre-show meeting that I forgot to say that. But
no,
but
I understand. I'm aboard I'm the goose to your Maverick. We get on the F-16. I don't know where we're going. I may be shot out and hit the canopy. That happens once in a while. And if you got to sacrifice the goose, you got to sacrifice.
As long as you don't break your neck, you're good.
Yeah. That's fine. What I mean? But the thing is, Mav went after goose in the ocean. You probably just swim away and.
I would jump right in, and you know that. You don't project. You might swim away. That's some grade A level projection right there. Is what that is. That's good to know. I'm never going to be in the water around you because knowing you're not going to jump in.
You'd use my limp, lifeless floating body as a flotation device, probably.
No.
Hey, come get me, guys.
Don't say that. By the way, I have enjoyed not that we're going to go back to the Lions, but I've enjoyed your road to the playoffs. I feel like it's almost an homage to our former colleague Michael Rosenberg, who wrote a road to 0-16 or whatever it is. And
yeah,
but this time it'll be fun. And
hey, Mike had fun with 0-16.
He did, but it's such a but he was having fun, but the fans were not. Right? The fans were not having fun at all. You might be able to have fun, and the fans could have fun too. We'll see.
Yeah,
but I've enjoyed your spin on that, your take on that. So, all right, Miguel Cabrera. I don't feel like we've talked about him enough. I don't feel like we've written about him enough.
Well, we haven't really in 10 years, probably.
Oh God, I've written about him 2 or 3 times in the last several years. But you're right. Yeah, there was a stretch where when Carlos, this is the best way to put it. He was so good, and I was covering the Tigers a lot during his peak. I was a sort of a part-time beat writer, actually, but it was hard not to write about him. He was so good, and every few games would do something that would just cause people the next day, back when people were still going to offices, to say, "Did you see what Cabrera did the night before?" You know what I mean? Or they would be on the radio listening to the game in the summer, and they knew he was about to come up, and they'd run inside and turn the TV on. I remember people talking about him like that, right? He was appointment. That's the best way to say it. It's a cliche, but he was appointment television at his best.
Yes. Yeah, he was. He was always, I remember when I would cover, when I do some backup games here and there, and we used to have a thing called Game in a Box, and it was basic short little items to take the place of a traditional game story. And one thing that we always did, or I always did at least, was how did Miggy do? And because people always want to know that was the question, right? From fans or friends, it was always like, hey, how did Miggy do last night? And he usually did something, and he was just he was one at the time. And when Victor Martinez was on the team, those two were some of the best professional hitters I've seen. Just knew how to work the count, knew it was coming, being patient, seizing the opportunity when they could with power, but also going the other way when they had to, and slapping a single and getting a run home, moving the guys over, whatever it was. But Cabrera, I mean, there's been so few people you've seen do it the way he has with power and average. The only thing he didn't really do is steal bases. never a speed merchant, but also a pretty good fielder too. I mean, third and first. He was a fun marvel to behold at the plate. I don't think we're ever going to see anybody like him for the Tigers organization, at least probably in our lifetimes.
Yeah, not for a while. I mean, I always thought of him as like Tony Gwynn. I mean, we're dating ourselves with power. I mean, he handled the bat like
right. Like Tony Gwynn couldn't play right field though. He was a pretty good fielder.
Right. Yeah. But just at the plate, I felt. I mean, he hit like Tony Gwynn. I mean, it's like he held the bat and batted like a little second baseman. Only he had the power of a first baseman or a designated hitter. It was. It was quite the combination.
And that's an interesting comparison because Tony Gwynn he was probably the grandfather of all this video analysis. Back then when you had grainy VHS tape, he just grinded on the tape, watching tape of his swing, of pitchers, breaking down everything. I just wonder like how much studying came into play for Miguel Cabrera, because I don't know. I don't get a sense he was like Mr. Studious. Like, I don't know if a lot of this was just talent and experience and knowing what's coming, understanding the game, understanding pitching, his own swing, situational stuff, whatever it is, and just raw. I mean, power is power. It's really hard to teach power, so you got it or you don't. But I just wonder. And that's one of the things that I don't think we've ever understood about him or will is, where did this come from? How did he get this good? Why was he this good? How did he, I think if someone is that kind of a worker, you tend to hear it from teammates, how hard they work and, prep and all that. But I don't know. He's still going to end up being somewhat of a mystery to us, but he was a marvelous mystery to watch for so many years.
Yeah, I feel like, I wrote a long piece on him. It's been a while now where I kind of broke down all the different parts of what made him such a good hitter. And he did study. And he was a really serious worker. It just, he never talked, right? I mean, he just didn't talk about much himself. And his teammates would talk some, but just the way they would talk about it was different. But no, he did do some study. He was blessed with a encyclopedic memory. And so when you would ask, okay, how does he study, whatever, people would say, okay, yeah, fine. He's in the film room. He is. And I remember his coaches talking about that. I remember Lloyd McClendon talked to me about that. But they would be distracted by the fact that he could remember all his at-bats, right? I mean, he could say, remember, I faced this pitcher this year, whatever. He had a crazy storage in his brain, and he could pull it up on cue. And so that allowed him, right? So maybe he didn't have to study quite as much, although from what I was told, he studied like everybody else. But he was just blessed with this ridiculous memory, and he could see things, and obviously the hands and the feet and the balance and the eyes. The eyes are ridiculous. But I remember Ron Gardenhire when he was with the Twins telling me one time, I went and sat in his office, telling me one time about how he just never seen anybody so relaxed at the plate. You think about the batter's box can be such a place of epic struggle, or success is, 30%.
Yeah.
The success is a 70% failure rate, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, you just think of these classic sort of Greek tragedy terms of how hard it is to hit a baseball in that struggle. And he treated it like a sandbox. Right. And just, let's just take the fire truck and roll it through. And here, I'm going to take a pail over here and put some sand in it and toss it in the air. But Gardenhire talked about that. He'd get in the batter's box And he said he'd swing, he'd step out, maybe one leg, kick that right leg, swing that right leg back, so he'd open up towards the dugout, because he was a right-hander, right? So towards the dugout, so he could look in. And Gardner said, yeah, he was trying to steal our signs, or he would just sort of stare and try to mess with us. Just to have the wherewithal and the comfort level to be completely in tune with all your surroundings, not just the fans, which he did also, but just everything about being at a baseball game and playing in a baseball game. And to do all that while you're in the batter's box, along with knowing what's coming from the pitcher, I mean, that's kind of ridiculous.
He's always seemed so at ease on the diamond everywhere, during batting practice, you name it. It just seems like that's where he belongs. He just seems comfortable, and he never seemed nervous. And you see that from the very best hitters. I don't know if I ever saw Tony Gwynn look nervous, all those years playing against my Dodgers. And those guys, you just see them, they just, there's a comfort there, whether it's belief in their ability. I think with Cabrera, he enjoyed the game. He just had a lot of fun playing it.
Loved it.
Chatty. I think that's one of the things that, I'll give him credit that, he didn't grouse about not playing at first base anymore. And he really loved playing first base because he got to talk to everybody who came to first base. So he was super chatty and social, and he was closer to the fans. And now that he doesn't play on the field, he's not near the fans anymore, going after foul balls and whatever, throwing a ball to the stand. So I think he holistically just loved the game, and that was part of it. I mean, when you really enjoy something, you tend to do better at it. So that was a little bit of the magic, I think, for him. But he was just such a complete batter, like you said, all the gamesmanship, he reminded me, the guy, one of the guys I've seen, like in, your favorite sport, hockey, the one player I've seen who was the most attuned to everything that was going on was Wayne Gretzky. When he was at the Kings, I really watched him a lot, and he just knew, that guy could spot too many men on the ice before the guy jumped on the ice, probably, but he just had, eyes on the back of his head, top of his head. He just knew everything that was going on all at once. And Cabrera kind of reminded me that, just hyper aware of everything that was going on, what the other dugout was doing, what the other players were doing, what the pitcher was doing, what the, the signs, whatever it is. If he'd been a faster player, actually, he would have been a hell of a base stealer, probably. He probably had that potential in him intellectually. But he was just fun to watch. And Victor Martinez reminded me of him that way a little bit too, as a hitter, being really aware of what was going on. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to really. It's interesting, right? Because you see it now. You still see the comfort. You still see he's a shadow of the player he used to be. He's been that for a while now, too long. It's been hard to kind of watch the end, but he still kind of has that Cabrera swagger. You couldn't tell if you just saw him coming up to the plate. You wouldn't know, like, what year is this? If you just saw a blind spot or a blind shot of him coming to the plate, is it Pete Cabrera or 2023 Cabrera? Still has the same demeanor.
He does, and credit to him for that. But you're right; it has been hard to watch in a lot of ways, and it's always tough when somebody's that good and then they fall off, and especially the length of time. He hasn't been that good in 6-7 years, and that's a long time. Right? It's a long time in our life. It's a long, long time in sports.
Yes.
Right. Sports years are almost like dog years that way. It's almost 3 to 1. It's probably 3. It's probably 3 to 1. And so
7 to 1. Come on.
Yeah. So it feels almost like a generation ago in a way, and yet he's still here. And it's, now it's fine because it's close to the end. You can look back and it's right. So that's good. But it's just, it has been tough to watch. And it always is when somebody's great. And then when they hang on and then they keep hanging on. And then you start thinking about, because you're watching mortality to some degree. It's sporting mortality, but there's part of it that's leaks into your own mortality. You just do. It's funny. As we're recording, I'm sitting at a desk, and there's a picture that I just caught out of the corner of my eye, and I'm mowing the lawn and the house that I'm in now, and my youngest son, is helping me push, and he's probably 2. And I look at that photo, and it went by in a flash, right? And so when we watch these great players, I think sometimes whatever it is in your own life, you think about that. Maybe not. It might be subconscious on some level, but I think you think about that. I think you feel that maybe more than you think about it. And that's part of what makes it a little painful, because let's be real. You say it's hard to watch. What we're really talking about, it's kind of painful. And you mentioned this earlier in sports, what sports can do and how that it's life. And you're talking about pressure and all this other things. Well, this is part of it too, is watching the inevitable come.
Well, it's not painful to me. I mean, I guess maybe if I were a Tigers fan, it'd be different, but just, you see this in other sports. I felt the same thing with Albert Pujols too. It was the same thing where a great player trying to hang on, trying to, still, probably fool himself that he could still keep doing it. But he wasn't a key part of his team, chewing up, roster spot or whatever. That to me was the difficult part about watching Cabrera, is knowing that the Tigers could potentially they could definitely use the salary space. Which players could they have gotten instead of paying Cabrera whatever $20+ million a year? That's where it was unfortunate. And I think in an honest moment, I think even the biggest Miggy fan would probably say, yeah, it would have been 5 years ago. It would have been nice for him to just bow out somehow, have some kind of potential buyout, which doesn't exist in baseball. So that's why they keep playing forever. But that's the unfortunate part of it. But, he was great.
That's a fan frustration, and that's been there with him, and it's been tough. And it was obviously not a great contract for the Tigers. And all of that is true. But it's still, there's something deeper there to me that gets down to, and it's true. And anybody that loves any sport, especially if they have shared that sport with somebody that's older than them or a lot younger than them, and it just marks the passage of time. And we tend to mark that time. There are demarcation lines in sports, either sometimes through championships or near championships, or just flat out greatness, an era of some great. And we've seen this with Tiger Woods. And so when somebody fades away, maybe in the prime, you were watching it with your dad or your mom or your son or your daughter or whatever. And then when that fades away, maybe that person's not around anymore, right? Or maybe they're at a different stage of their life. So there's so many things that we just think about without even realizing we think about when we're watching somebody like Cabrera struggle for so long after being so good. And being so riveting, right? And compelling and having our full attention. And then it just sort of fades away. And that's just, life is like that. Anyway, yeah, it's about done.
Musings on mortality with Shawn Windsor. That's a nice positive note.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it's just we pass it down, right? And we do. And that's how.
Well, let me ask you,
sports are beautiful that way.
Is there a favorite player you ever had who you felt that way about, that you were really sad to see them watch their decline or the inevitability of them leaving?
I felt that way a little bit with Tiger. It's not that I loved Tiger, the human being. He was so thrilling and so good and so new that feeling like you were a part of watching that and sharing that and hearing all of that. Yeah, that was tough when he all of a sudden wasn't there, because he's not been that has not been replaced. Right? I mean,
it never will be.
Not golf. I mean, you could argue. I mean, there are a few other. I mean, some folks would talk about Messi that way, right? When I was a kid, there was Tony Dorsett, but he was not that for the American football public. For me, he was. But yeah, no, it's just greatness that way, right? When something's when somebody's competitive and a champion and great and also maybe beautiful in the way they play, when you get all those things together, like Kobe or Michael Jordan was like that, right? So, yeah, that's when they really transcend and mark the passage for me. And Cabrera, I think, he was beautiful to watch. If we're being honest, right? He really was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was gorgeous to watch. The movement, how fluid and graceful at that size. It was almost unfathomable to be that big and move. You remember? He was like a dancer up there.
Yeah. It's hard to remember him being that way at this point, but
he was. All right. On that note, let's take one more quick break and come back with your favorite thing. Not mine, but yours. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Freep Sports with Carlos and Shawn. It's that time of the show. Your favorite thing.
My favorite thing, which is your favorite thing.
Yeah, whatever it is this week.
I don't know if you can steal this one, Shawn. I'll give you credit if you can figure out an artful way to steal it. So let me go first, as usual. Right, my favorite thing was every Sunday when the Lions play at home, right? We go to the game. We take a shuttle. There's a media shuttle, drops us off about a block or so from Ford Field. So you got to make your way into the stadium. You got to walk past a lot of fans and stuff. There tends to be this one guy. I think he's the same guy. I'm pretty sure I've seen him several times. And he has a megaphone and a speaker. And he's, I don't know what he's railing against or for exactly. Some religious undertones, I believe. It's hard to make sense of what exactly he's getting at. But he was kind of in a different spot. And I was walking past him, very kind of isolated area, not a lot of foot traffic in that area. And I noticed as people are walking past him, he's kind of just insulting them and telling them, they're going to hell and this and that, and you don't know what you're doing and why, you people don't, whatever it is. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't understand exactly what his point is, but he was berating people essentially. And as I walked past him, it was just me and him. And I try not to make eye contact, so to not encourage these kind of people. But he clearly saw me, and I was wearing white pants. And and he said, "Look at you." And this is in a megaphone, right? And there's not a lot of people around, so it's mostly just me hearing it. It's like, "Look at you with your," he said, your butt face. Your face looks like a butt, and you're white. And you're wearing white, you look like you're wearing a wedding dress. You have a butt face and you're wearing a wedding dress. And it just, at first, it was such a specific pointed jab, it kind of like threw me off. And I kind of got mad. But I was like, I shouldn't respond. But I don't know why, Shawn, but throughout the day, every time I kept remembering him saying, you have a face that looks like a butt. You have a butt face. I couldn't stop laughing or giggling about it. Just the idea of a butt face, which I can't even imagine why he would have said that. But it's actually pretty creative to come up with it on the spot. Maybe it's a generic insult he uses, kind of like Don Rickles, right? Hockey puck or whatever. But it kind of sort of made my day that day. And even into Monday, I kept thinking about it and thinking about my butt face. So I was kind of grateful to have a little bit of something that sometimes just tickles a funny bone in you. That he certainly didn't mean it to be funny, but I found it pretty funny for the first 2 days that I kept remembering it. So yeah, my butt face, Shawn. That was my favorite thing this last week. Follow that. Steal it. I dare you to steal that.
No, I'm not going to steal it. That's awesome. No, my favorite thing was, covered Michigan home games, and it's similar with the Lions games, home Lions games. You go to these games, and we probably should be smarter to eat before and after, but sometimes you can't. You end up eating in the press box. It's not always the healthiest food. That's not a criticism or a complaint at all. But one thing that I love about both Michigan home games and Lions home games is the walk after. And in Ann Arbor, I live a little too far away from the stadium to walk all the way, but but I usually walk for halfway at least, especially this time of the year and going into October. The leaves start to change, and I cut through kind of an older neighborhood, and you just get just walking. It's I walk for probably, like I said, maybe 30, 40 minutes or so before I finally get picked up. But I love that. And for the Lions games, I don't normally take the shuttle. I walk, and then that's not near as far as the way I walk or the distance in Ann Arbor. But I just like that walk after being at a game and sitting and writing and sometimes eating, a chili dog or whatever it is. Although I did not have one this past Sunday. Hopefully you're proud of me. I did have an ice cream cone though. but that walk just feels so good. You're stretching legs. You've been sitting there. And that's my favorite thing. I did it on back-to-back days this weekend, so that's helpful because I'm not the biggest exercise guy. I used to be. The things that used to keep me in shape I can't do anymore because of injuries, and so walking is one of the few things I can do. So I enjoy that. So that was it.
Oh, you walked off the ice cream bar, so that's good. It's a call it even.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably ice cream bar 1, me 0. I don't know if it's even, but it's better than 5-0. How about that?
Yes. Well, that's right. Nice. I will be happy to think of you trespassing across people's lawns in Ann Arbor to cut through to get to your neighborhood. So that's a nice thought.
No, I really do. I don't pretend I'm in Britain where there's no property and you just walk wherever you want. But no, there's property over there. But no, I use the sidewalks, man.
Good. I'll be rooting for you not to get mugged.
You probably walk in the middle of the street.
I do not like the walk.
Because you own the street.
I've had to walk a few times from Ford Field to the parking structure where we park about a mile away or so, and I don't like it at night. It's a little different now. I think when I started covering the team in the mid-2000s, it was a little dicier. Very few people around. Now it's kind of people are partying the whole time and whatever. It's a different vibe. But I didn't like having an expensive computer that I did not own on my shoulder walking through, the mean streets of downtown Detroit that have certainly changed quite a bit. But especially in the winter, Shawn, when it gets cold and icy and whatever, rainy, that's not a walk I would take. But you're right, this weekend was nice.
Raining's not great. I don't mind it in the cold either, but because you can usually warm yourself up. But in any case, all right, let's wrap this up. Who are we thinking?
We got to thank producer Robin Chang because he's got a lot of work ahead of him. We had some technical difficulties as usual. Another Apollo 13 issue with the podcast. My fault this time for sure. And we have to thank executive producers Crooklyn Crawford and Jeanette Delgado, and editor of the Freep Press, Nicole Avery Nichols. But Shawn, every week, who is the most important person we have to thank?
The listeners who take their time to hang out with us. So we're grateful. And obviously you can find this Free Press podcast, which is called Freep Sports with Carlos and Shawn, which is a long name. And if I had my way, I would rename it to just the Carlos Menards Show. I think that's a lot pithier. And more people would listen, to be honest with you. But you can find it wherever you find your favorite podcasts, at Apple, Spotify. When you get there, subscribe, rate us, give us a shout, let us know what you think. Until next week, Carlos, when we are back and you are back from Green Bay, enjoy Wisconsin, by the way, and have fun at the game. But yeah, until next week when we are going to be back with this show, right? I hope. We soon.
Yes, okay. We will be.
Good. I'm glad you're gonna be there, and I'll join you once more. All right. Until then, we'll talk to you soon.